Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's ClearPath LeaderCast. My name is Craig Anderson. I'm the president of ClearPath Coaching and Consulting and spent about 25 years of my career in corporate America, launched a small business, grew that small business. And through that process, was on a journey of learning how to be a leader. I was what I called an accidental leader. I never really set out for that and learned a lot of lessons along the way. And when I launched the ClearPath Coaches and Consulting business, my goal was to help accidental leaders, those of us who had a good idea and grew a business and suddenly found ourselves in a leadership role, or went into a career in corporate America not thinking we'd ever be into a leadership role, but suddenly found ourselves there. Those are accidental leaders. We didn't really anticipate we'd be in this position in our careers, yet here we are. And now we have to find ways to get things done through other people to do so effectively, keep those people motivated, keep those people focused and growing, and keep them with us, especially these days with all the challenges of keeping a fully staffed team. So that's what we talk about here is how to get your confidence up, how to grow so you don't second guess your decisions. And that's where we really try and focus. And today on ClearPath LeaderCast, I want to talk to you about soft leadership. A lot of times, we hear right now a big focus and trend in leadership is around empathic leadership and servant leadership. And those are good things. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here to tell you that we need to be jerks as leaders, but there's a difference between being soft and then being effective as a leader. And that's where I want to focus in today. If you have comments or questions, let me know what you think in the comments or any questions you have. If you're catching this on replay, drop a hashtag replay. Let me know what you think. I'd be happy to answer any questions that way as well. So today I want to talk about things that we think that kind of lead us to become soft leaders when we need to be focused leaders and leading from a position of strength and confidence and authority. So the three areas that I want to talk about today is one around accountability and performance and some bad ideas we can generate around that and what to do. Two, defining what workplace norms are, what is acceptable, what is not in your workplace. And then finally, the last piece, letting decisions linger. Uh, those are the three areas we're going to talk about today. As always, three areas, three tips, 15 minutes or less. So you can take these and start incorporating them into your leadership and your leadership style. If you have any struggles with that, or if you'd like some help getting better at that, down at below on the scroll, you can connect with me, clearpathcoaches.com/intro call. Let's set up 15 to 30 minutes to talk through what's going on in your world and see how we can help you move forward. So let's jump in. Thing one, accountability and performance. I was recently in a conversation with a leader and, they want a friendly workplace. And that's really important to them. They, family friendly. And these are great things to talk about, having a family friendly workplace. That's something we should focus on. We want a place that people want to come to work. As I always used to say, look, I don't want you to jump out of bed like in a movie with the sun shining, you throw out your arms, you're dancing, you're so excited to go to work. But I also don't want you dragging in, feeling miserable walking into the office. So that culture, having a place that people want to work is really important. But that's not going to work well if you don't find a way to balance within that, holding people accountable for performance. We have a lot of discussions about this today. We talk about, hey, I don't really care how many hours you work as long as the job gets done. And that's great. I can live with that as a leader. But here's the thing. I need to hold you accountable when you don't step up for that. And that's the piece that I think you risk is not going through, is when you don't hold people accountable, that actually undermines everything you're trying to build. Hey, thanks, Beverly. Thank you, Chris. That undermines everything you're trying to do as a leader to build that family-friendly workplace, because that's going to start creating dissension. Well, why am I working so hard if that person doesn't and they're not being held accountable? That's where it falls apart. So if you want to be that leader who is focused on work-life balance and the importance of those things, that's great. Do it. But when you have those people who are not performing, you need to handle those people quickly and make the moves to either help them be more successful in the role, find them a role in the organization where they can be successful, or have the mutual decision or your decision to move them out of the organization. That's really where I want to focus you when you're thinking about accountability and performance for your team. So that's part one. Part two, as a leader, you get to define the workplace norms. There is a lot going on today. There's a lot of kind of the outside world wanting to come into your business. The culture, people want to bring culture and some of those things into your business. And we see lots of these struggles with kind of the next generation coming into the workplace. But that doesn't mean that you as the leader are not setting the tone for what the business is. A very small example, but a very real example. In my last business, we focused really hard on building a great culture. We were actually named a great place to work in Indianapolis, where I live. And we were successful in that. And one of the things we did is we moved into a new space and we wanted to have kind of a social hub area, an area where we could have those intentional collisions, which was really hot pre-COVID. And in that area, we had some couches and some places to eat food and things and some TVs. And early on, it was like, well, we should just throw TVs on. That's what they do in doctors' waiting rooms and everything else. But my office was strategically placed right next to that area. And I started hearing the discussions happening and the discussions getting more heated. And, my views, we are not going to start having discussions about politics in the workplace. That is not acceptable in the culture that I'm building. It builds strife. It builds dissension. It doesn't pull my team together. It pulls my team apart. There's a whole lot of things we buy to come together in my office, and that's where I want my people focused. So I just made the rule: no more television news on the TVs. We moved it to other things. Might be the weather, might be sports, might be the Cartoon Network was hot for a while. But that's where you have the opportunity. And people weren't necessarily happy about it, or some people weren't. A lot of people were very relieved. But you have the ability to set the tone for what your workplace is going to be. You may have people who say, well, I think I should be able to do this. Here's the answer to those questions. I appreciate that you disagree with this decision, but it is the decision. This is the workplace that we're building. That's the end of the discussion. So take the strong position on what you want your culture to be. Plant your stake in the ground for what that culture is going to be and fight hard to build that culture. But don't let those things from the outside world come in and start tearing your culture apart. That's not going to make your business successful. It's going to take the focus off the ball for everybody, and your business will not succeed in the long run at the levels you want it to succeed. So define your workplace norms. Say what's okay, say what's not okay, and that's okay. The last piece I want to touch on is this idea about letting decisions linger. I had a boss, and I have lots of opinions and stories about that boss, some good, some bad. But the one thing he said that has always stuck with me is the idea that problems don't age well. And that's a part where we think we're being that servant leader. We think we're being that empathic leader when we're not holding people accountable when we see them not performing. And we touched on this in the tip 1 piece around accountability. But we understand, well, I'm not going to bring it up this time. They had a bad day here. They had a bad day there. Things are going on. And we start making excuses, and we let the decisions linger. The excuse we tell ourselves for why we're doing it is because we're being a compassionate, empathic servant leader. But we have to have the self-awareness to ask ourselves the question, is that what I'm doing? Am I doing that, or am I using that as an excuse to not make the hard decision, to avoid conflict? That was always I hate conflict. I was actually asked, so I did some assessments, and someone said, Craig, everything here says you don't like conflict. How can you be an effective coach if you're not willing to have some conflict? Well, I learned how to do it. Doesn't mean I enjoy it, but I didn't like to have that conflict. I didn't like to have that hard discussion. And, sometimes feelings are going to get hurt. And there's tips and tricks we can use to go into those difficult conversations to make them easier and to make them safer. And we'll talk about that in a future video. But here's the deal. When you let that decision linger, you're not doing anybody any favors. You think you're helping yourself, but what you're doing is you are hurting yourself because, one, you're not giving that opportunity for that employee to improve, to learn what they're doing wrong and to how to get better. You're actually giving them an excuse and an allowance for poor behavior in the workplace. The other people who are working hard for you, who are your A and B players, are going to look at that C player getting off scot-free and decide, well, hey, if I'm all getting paid the same, I'm not going to work as hard as I have been. So you start to undermine their confidence in you as the leader. So when you see problems in the workplace, you need to take the control of that problem, jump in on it, and work to hold people accountable, to make the tough decisions as soon as possible. I have never run into anybody who said, man, I am so glad I waited a long time to resolve that difficult issue. That really paid dividends for me. No, the dividends that it paid were sleepless nights, second guessing yourself, awkwardness, and a loss of the team members that were really carrying things home. Thank you, Mary, so much. I appreciate that. So that's the areas that I want you to think about. Now, we can make tough decisions. We can have tough conversations with people. Here's a couple of quick tips for how you can do that in your workplace. One, when you have to make these decisions that are tough, and sometimes those tough ones are even, especially as we're going into a recession potentially, maybe it means I do have to reduce staff. Ask yourself if that's really what you have to do, but think about it. First, when you're having to make these tough decisions, be fair, create a matrix to follow these decisions and follow it faithfully. That's how you maintain credibility as a leader in the organization. Two, be fast. Problems don't age well, as I said. And if you're slow to act, people are going to generate their own stories about what's going on. Be decisive, be quick. And then finally, be compassionate when you give people the news. It's not always the best news. It usually isn't the best news if you have to tell somebody they're being terminated or their position's being eliminated or that they're not performing well. Have some compassion about it. Get to the point. Do it in a private environment and then give them the best opportunity you can. If they were a good worker, but you just have to cut that, make sure you give them good references. If you have packages, make sure you can offer them good. Those are the things that are going to make you the long-term successful leader that you want to be. So that's how you can move forward, get away from soft leadership. We want to be compassionate. We want to be empathetic as leaders, but don't let those things become an excuse for your inaction as a leader. Be decisive, act quickly. That's it for this week's Clear Path Leadercast. Again, if you would like to talk about how you can improve your leadership in your organization, how you can become the leader that you aspire to be, to get away from feeling like an accidental leader, actually lead with confidence, set up a time today. Let's have a conversation. clearpathcoaches.com/intro call. Thanks everybody so much for joining me. I'm here live every Thursday at noon Eastern. Take care, everybody.